Good morning and welcome to our webinar. I want to thank you all for joining us today on behalf of myself, Koen and Marco, of course. My name is Ilah Waals and I work in the marketing department at Ameyde Group, and I have the pleasure of moderating this session today. As you already know, we'll be discussing innovative claims handling in practice with a few nice examples of how we actually use it within Ameyde. So for those of you who maybe aren't too familiar with us, we handle claims and manage risk from prevention and management to settlement. Within the Ameyde Group, we consist of around 35 companies with over 100 offices in 30 countries, and we're all specialized. They're all specialized in their own services within the insurance industry, such as claims handling, marine surveying, risk management, or even insurance systems such as claims handling software. I think with that short introduction, let's get started. I have two expert speakers joining me today for this session, Koen Molenaar, Sales and Innovation Manager at Ameyde Systems, and Marco Valkenburg, Director of Digital Innovation at Ameyde Group. So both Koen and Marco have extensive experience in transforming the claims handling process through innovation and automation.
I think we exceed the 50 years together, right, Marco?
Definitely, more than.
I thought you weren't going to mention that. Well, here's a quick look at today's agenda. We'll be discussing Ameyde's claims handling process, automation in our daily operations with a few practical examples, and we'll end with a Q&A session where we look forward to answering any questions you may have. So let's get started.
Nice.
Let's first have a look at the claims process within Ameyde and what it entails. Marco, maybe you can give us a brief walkthrough.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Ilah. Well, looking at the claims process, it might be quite familiar to every one of you, but just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, how we are looking at our claims process and the different phases that we distinguish in that process, just a small walkthrough of the different stages that we distinguish. So starting with the FNOL, first notice of loss, where we support each channel where you can think of, allowing different stakeholders within the claims process to issue claims to Ameyde. The next phase within our process is triage. It's a first evaluation of the claim to check if there's a valid policy against the incident which is being claimed. We set the initial reserve, we have all data available to assign it to the right handler. During the claims process itself, we establish conclusion on liability, the actual damage amount evaluation of the damage. We perform our anti-fraud checks, and if needed, we made a step out to external service providers for surveying using preferred supplier networks if applicable. We have our networks available for assistance, repair or replacement in kind. These are all external services that we embed into our process. Based on the conclusions of claims handling, we are paying out, or if applicable, recovery damages from third parties, and as part of closing, we perform quality checks. Of course, invoicing of our fees, that's where we live from. We do the archiving according to GDPR compliancy. We have our reporting available and allowing our customers to use our data to feed the wheel of underwriting in their systems. Looking at it from a high level, this is a pretty straightforward process, but the challenge that we have is that we are supporting hundreds of clients, all having their own specifics regarding the process that we execute on their behalf. So that is also supported in our way of working, not a standard process, but a tailor-made process to our customers.
Okay, a nice overview, Marco. And maybe it's already nice to give an idea of how automation fits into this process from a more tech standpoint, Koen.
Yeah, it's a good question, Ilah, because when we talk about the tech standpoint, we need to take a step back. So to automate this process and also to facilitate this process, we need to structure the underlying process and give it a system. So we built our own tailor-made system to support the handler in his daily activities. And Marco will show the screens later on, but for us, that's the spine for creating both the support towards our claim handlers and the spine for creating automation, or at least making it possible.
Yeah, you're right, Koen. So with that, let's transition into the main tool which aids our automation of these processes, like you said. Marco, maybe you can go into the details of what we see on this screen.
Yeah, well, this is just a brief look and feel of how our claims system called Echo looks like. We try to make it as efficient as possible for our claims handler, embedding all kind of smart technology to make the process as efficient as possible. Claims handler has all relevant information at his fingertips, like policy information, reserve information, information regarding liability and status of the process regarding liability, if any payments are being made. But most important, and that is facilitating our automation, is in the right-hand bottom side of the screen, the status of the workflow, which is guiding this claims handler, or which is guiding the process to be executed in the most efficient way. It's important to realize that there's one instance of this system that's being used throughout the entire organization, Van Ameyde organization worldwide. It's supporting all P&C products as far as claims handling is concerned in both the private and commercial lines. So one instance, one process throughout the organization being used.
And due to the broadness of the system, if you like a demo, then please reach out after the webinar.
Yeah, Echo really lays the foundation for our claims processes within Van Ameyde, as well as automation within our processes. And that's a nice transition into the four main instruments that we use to automate the claims handling process. That is straight-through processing, robotic process automation, process AI, and generative AI. So we want to take a look at all of them. Let's first take a look at straight-through processing. And Koen, maybe you can give an idea of how this process works within Van Ameyde.
Definitely. I think most of the participants have been, thrown nearly to death in the last decade with the STP term, the straight-through processing. In essence, it's all about automating the workflow by designing a predefined decision model. So basically, I perceive it as a surveyor belt. So how can we go from the flaw towards the closure of the claim without any human intervention? And basically, that's also what now has been shown on the screen. So first, the flaw comes in, and then it's very important that the incident details and the underlying contract details are gathered automatically and are checked. Okay, do we have sufficient information to actually perform the full flow? Then we go into the triage. Like any normal claim handling process, we set initial reserves and we check if there is a potential duplicate claim. And while we are perceiving it as a conveyor belt, every moment in this process, the claim could fall out of this process and it drops to a human handling. But let's assume that we continue on the automatic flow, then the real handling starts as soon as we have set the initial reserves and know that all the information is available. Then we get the logical questions. Okay, do we need expertise? Is the liability clear? Can we confirm that the reserve amounts are correct? And if that's the case, can we continue to a payment? Now, logically, STP is only used for simple claims. And so it's not used as when there is a more complex situation. So primarily it's storm or one-sided motor claims. Yeah. If you can continue, Ilah, the total overview is shown afterwards. And this is the full conveyor belt, as I just mentioned. Meaning it's just a set of decisions that need to be made. Now, we have implemented it in several ways, and a nice example is our virtual employee, Johnny Storm. Johnny Storm is our storm claim handler. And as soon as there's a claim in Belgium with an amount lower than €1,000, the claimant can expect a fast payout, meaning in a few seconds, the full process can be handled, and the email as shown on the right side can be sent to the customer saying, hey, good news, you can expect your amount to be on your bank account within a few days. And I think that's a nice example of how STP works. And to summarize it, it's very powerful for simple changes, but it's rigid. So there is no flexibility in the decision model itself. That's also why I think it's a logical first step in the automation journey.
Maybe one thing to add, Koen, there is an important prerequisite to SDP. That is that you have the intake process as complete as possible. So we have all kinds of tooling in place for the different channels by which we receive claims, allowing us to capture FNOL data as complete and as smart as possible. And this is an example for the claimant being an insured, but we also have these kind of intakes for brokers, agents, allowing us for both the claimant and the handler to get the FNOL data in as complete as possible in the most efficient way.
Thank you for sharing also these real life examples, for example, of the intake process, what a consumer would see. Very interesting.
Yeah, everything that we bring to the table today is real life, so that's always good to know.
All right, well, let's move on to robotic process automation and its role in claims handling. Here we can see again the condensed version of the earlier depicted claims process. Marco, can you give us an idea of how RPA comes into play in the process?
Well, Koen already discussed SDP, but still there are, of course, claims which do not follow the SDP process. And within these claims, there are a lot of repetitive tasks. And these repetitive tasks, we try to automate as much as possible with RPA, robotic process automation. Okay. So it's actually technology which simulates a user entering data into the system. And we use it as a quite pragmatic way, for example, to extract all kind of data from all kind of external sources to complete the claims file according to a predefined structure. So it is replacing a lot of human activities since we have implemented it, and we have some quite impressive figures around that. Mm-hmm. You go to. We have today more than 75 processes being automated with RPA, and that resulted in more than 2 million activities being processed by a bot instead of a human handler. Besides that, it is, of course, its availability. It's 24/7 available, so it's not taking any breaks during the weekend. And it's specifically, we really rely on it, specifically in the FNOL process, where it's supporting us in more than 10,000 FNOLs that we process each week. And without this technology being available, we would not be able to handle these amount of volumes.
And from a technological perspective, it's funny to see them in action. So you can actually see the bot working on the desktop as a human being. But it's good to mention that also, similar to STP, it's quite a rigid form of automation. As soon as the context changed, the bot will actually get lost. He does not know where to go to or what to do. So you can only use it within the rigid, very highly repetitive tasks.
And that's also what we saw on this slide, right? The different icons above and below the line of the process is the multiple places, but the small places where RPA can take over steps in the process, right?
Minor steps. Yeah, very simple. Okay. But very powerful.
Yeah. Well, we'll move right along to process AI and explore how this technology also transforms claims handling within our business. Koen, maybe you can take us through this process and maybe give a bit of background on the name Process AI.
Yeah, it was quite funny because we didn't have a name for what we call Process AI. We invented it. Basically, if we talk about AI, normally a lot of people think about the chat module that you have with ChatGPT, and that's what we will call generative AI. And with process AI, we mean that it doesn't create content, but it processes and understands existing information in a more intelligent way than the business ruling way that we did with the STP engine, or the predefined tasks way that we did with the RPAs. So within process AI, we tend to create real artificial intelligence, and we use that for the handling of our correspondence. Now, let's dive into that case for a moment. So within Van Ameyde, we handle around 1 million claims. And that amount, it implies that we have around 2 million emails and 5 million documents every year. If we would bring that down to an amount of hours consumed by our administration, it's around 85,000 hours. And those 85,000 hours could also be used in a different way, for example, in handling or taking better care of handling our customers. So that's where we thought, okay, let's see if we can implement an AI that is capable of reading the emails and documents, in understanding the intent of the document, and then eventually process it towards our backend system. We have implemented that AI 3 years ago. It's active in 8 countries, I think in 9 companies right now. It's growing every quarter. And currently we handle per week around 15,000 emails and 23,000 documents via this AI. And of course, if you make the math, that's not the 2 million and the 5 million that we have on the left side of the sheet. It's, I think, about 15 to 20%. So we are still growing, but it already means that we can release around 500 hours per week saved on this administrative, boring process. And let me go a bit into how this works. So if we take the process, we have 4 steps. The first one logically is that the correspondence comes in, it's being forwarded to the AI, and the AI basically does 4 things. Like I mentioned before, it reads the incoming emails and is capable of understanding the intent underlying to this email. By understanding it, it's also capable of classifying it. And by classifying it, it's capable of sending it to our backend, so allocating it to the right claim, and then ensuring that the correct process is initiated so that the handler, within the context of the right process, can continue the handling of the claim. That's, well, in a more abstract way, how it currently works.
Yeah, and again, very important to stress the fact that this is only to support the claims handlers in their daily tasks and release them from the administrative burdens, right? They remain in control throughout the whole process.
Definitely.
Well, we'll move on to our last, but arguably the most interesting instrument we use to automate the claims handling process, and that is generative AI. Marco, where does generative AI come into the claims handling process?
Well, at this moment, we apply generative AI as first, I would not say attempt, but first use case within our organization into the FNOL process. What we try to achieve with having this Gen AI technology in place is to do an evaluation of the first notice of loss based on all data received and identify if we are able to take the claim into the normal claims process or if any additional information is needed. And based on that, generate the response to the claimant. So how does it look like in practice? If we receive a FNOL, we currently only apply it on motor claims to a large extent. One of the accompanying documents in such a claim is the EAF. So what we do is we read the EAF, we evaluate all documents attached to the first notice of loss besides the European accident form. We extract all the data from the form, and based on that, we determine, based on claim profiling, what information do we need, and what information is provided with the claim. And that results into, next slide please, the conclusion whether or not any information within the claim is missing or not. And based on that, the outgoing correspondence is being generated by the system. Besides that, is creating a claim summary for the claims handler to be used further on into the process. So what do we do within our process? We validate all the output which is generated by the AI technology. And if we confirm both the extracted structural data as well as the generated responses and the generated claim summary, we push that into our claim system. We always keep the human in the loop to make sure that everything what the technology is deciding upon or is suggesting is being validated before it's actually taking into account further on into the process.
And that I think it's also nice to share that human in the loop is actually an industry term. I didn't know that, but it just goes to show how important the claims handler is throughout this process, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And keep the claim handler in the driver's seat while we are still in the, well, I think, orientational phase with AI.
Yeah. So it is really supporting the claims handler in making decisions, creating responses based on evaluation of all data and documents that we have received. So currently we apply it only to the ethanol process, but obvious that we will make some next steps on that, applying that technology as well.
Yeah. And that's a nice transition to introducing what the future holds for Van Ameyde and our claims process. What are some things that we can still look forward to?
Well, as I mentioned, currently only first notice of loss evaluation of all documents and data received. The next step is that it will support the claims handler in an advice on the liability based on all data that we have received. We will evaluate the event or the incident data against the policy wording to have the system suggest a confirmation of cover of the event within a policy. We will use it in further making our process of evaluation of the damage more efficient. It should allow us to determine whether or not additional expertise is needed and send out the relevant correspondence to initiate that process. And during the execution of the process, it continuously creates or will create a summary of what's happening in the claims file, allowing the claims handler to easily dive into the claim and get a short summary of what's actually happened and what is still to be done. During the process, fraud detection will run based on identification of document or photo, how do you call it, manipulation, which is a typical fraud indicator, which is being triggered by this technology as well.
I think if you look at it from a futuristic perspective, having generative AI, well, empowering it with what we already experienced with the process AI part, is we could develop a claim handling buddy. An AI who's actually supporting the claimant, the claim handler during the process, continuously summarizing all information, providing next steps, even helping in generating correspondence templates. All these things could be done in nearly all of the steps in the long term.
Well, it sure does sound like we have a lot to look forward to.
That sure does.
Well, unfortunately, we're already at the end. So thank you very much, Marco and Koen, for imparting your knowledge with us today. Now we come to the Q&A section. Does anybody have any questions? I have a poll that I would like to send to you. regarding how you would like us to follow up on this webinar. And in the meantime, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, and I fully understand we went quite fast over, let's say, a decade of automation. So please let us know if you want more information on one of these.
Indeed. Maybe in the meantime, while we wait for people to type their questions in, one of the common questions I think that we receive is, do we expect to reduce personnel?
Well, there are two sides, at least two answers on this question. First of all is that with the technology, it helps us in the challenge of having sufficient personnel or staff to handle the claims. Yep. Currently looking at the issue of staff shortage and having these kind of technology in place definitely helps us in producing more output with the same number of people.
Yeah, that's the really the designing principle of how we look at automation. I see we have some questions popping in. Why do you process only 15 to 20% of emails via AI? What's blocking you for the other 80%? I think that's a mixture of several reasons. First of all, we were gradually allowing our systems to use the AI. So we're still in the point that we actually evolve with our systems. And as we are active in 25 or 26 countries, the languages spoken there differ as well. So we need to train the AI. But as I understood, Marco, for the generative AI, the training principle will be different on the long term.
Yeah,
right?
It will be different. We will more benefit from the LLPs, large language LLMs, large language models, which should deal with the multilingual aspects in future, like in the original implementation of the technology that we did. There was still a big dependency on training the models in itself per language. So that was holding us back a bit in implementing the technology to add additional languages, add additional offices to use the technology. So still a big part to win, but with the 15 to 20%, we already achieved quite some results as well.
Nice. I think we have another question. And Marco, I think you can answer it. How watertight is the system to be sure that the claim handler received all necessary information? And I assume the question is asked on the fourth direction on the POC that you performed with generative AI.
How watertight? What we did is we identified, based on certain profiles, what the specific type of information is that you should need to be handled, specific claim fitting into that profile. So based on claim profiles, we know exactly what is needed. And with the technology in place to determine what's a specific type of document that we receive. So straightforward example is the EAF, so that's recognized, but it can also be photos from the damage. It can be witness testimonies which are attached to it. So the technology identifies the type of documents that are attached to the first notice of loss. And based on that, matching it to the claim profile, what we need, it concludes whether or not it is sufficient to start handling the claim. It does not look yet at the content of a photo, so it can be a photo of the dog which is sent, which of course has nothing to do with the damage. So it only at this stage recognizes that photos are attached to a first notice of loss, if that is applicable, and it brings it further, but only in the next step. It will be looked at from a content perspective, if it is really the information that you're looking for. So watertight, as far as document types is concerned, compared to the claim profile, as far as content is concerned, that's only part of the claims process that is being looked at after the Gen AI did its did his job.
Well, I haven't seen any other questions in the meantime. Oh.
Let me read up the question that just popped in. How do you reassure older actors in the insurance market to accept your STP processes as a solution? Do some partners don't allow you to use such technology? This is a question I love. Yeah, of course, we as a TPA work together with the insurers, and there are always more hesitant behaviors if we talk about automation and STPing. And that's also why we limit ourselves to the simple claims and not provide too much of a complex decision model. So from a technology perspective, I think we could go way further, but then from a risk perspective, that's just simply not allowed. Marco, do you have?
Yeah, well, I think this the question probably is related to the more extended scope, also covering the AI and the Gen AI technology. Of course, it is part of the service offering within Van Ameyde. So if you bring your claims to Van Ameyde, we try to do it in the most efficient, most advanced way. But still, since we are able to define processes on client level and even within the client on product level, we are always able to, if there is a certain doubt from a client to include this technology or not, we always are able, by configuration, to exclude this type of technology being part of the claims process, how we execute it. But it means, on the other side, a less efficient process, which, of course, has its costs attached to it.
Yeah, if we would, for example, switch off all bots, we would definitely.
Yeah, that's a very easy, straightforward example. But also, do we have all FNOLs flowing through the Gen AI technology or not? So we have some kind of gatekeeper who determines which goes through and which does not go through the Gen AI tooling.
Okay. Any more questions? Maybe we wait a minute. Okay. Well, unless we have any more questions, I'd like to thank you all for attending our webinar today. We'll follow up with you in the coming days regarding the webinar recording in case you'd like to rewatch it, or if you'd like to share with your colleagues, as well as a copy of our Echo brochure, as I see a couple of you requested in the poll. So we'll share that with you so you can learn more about the claims handling system. And if any questions come up afterwards, please feel free to reach out to us at marketing@vanameyde.com or directly to Koen or Marco. Their email addresses are also included. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you all very much then. I wish you a nice rest of your day.
Attendance. Thank you. Bye-bye. Enjoy your day.
Bye-bye.